Welcome back to another episode of Health is Wealth. And thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. And as always, I am beyond grateful and thankful from the bottom of my heart to each and every one of you who is tuning into today's episode and also tuning in to support the podcast. As every week I am sharing a new episode, just sharing some words and thoughts of hopes, inspiration, and motivation to hopefully bring you value. Things that I'm just going through on my own crazy ride that we call life, things that I'm just learning for the first time, things that I'm just understanding in a different point of view, in hopes that it brings value into your world. So thank you again for being here. And what I wanted to share with you today on the topic is this. It was a quote that I recently heard, and I hear it from time to time, and I don't quite know the origin from the quote, but it is that in life, we have 99 problems until we have a health problem, and then we only have one problem. And it's really something that's very real to think about and be aware of, right? And I think it's one of the most important things that we need to prioritize in our life. And it's our health, because without it, what do we really have? If we don't have good quality of life, then, what's living really worth? And altogether, if we don't have good quality of life, and we're not taking care of our health because we're neglecting it, how long are we going to live for, right? So when all else is aside, the only thing that keeps us here, is our health, really. If we want to live long and strong and happy and healthy, it's kind of a big deal. It's something that we need to always be aware of. And as I talk to you about this and just become more aware of it, because I am getting older, I am sharing this because, over this past weekend, I had a sleep apnea episode, and it was a very terrifying one, probably the worst one that I've ever had. This is something that I've kind of grown up with, and so it's not the first time I've ever had it. It does not happen very often at all. So, I've never seeked out going to the doctor to get the CPAP machines or any of that stuff. But, this last weekend was definitely a scarier episode of what I've had. And for those who are not familiar with sleep apnea, it pretty much, what happens is you wake up in the middle of the night while you're asleep and your air waves collapse, restricting you from being able to breathe. So you wake up gasping for air. And as you're trying to, inhale and exhale to get the, flow going in your airwaves, you can't, it's like you're trying to breathe, but it's stopped. Your airways are shut off. And so it literally feels like dying. It's quite literally, for anyone who's familiar with it, the closest thing of what it would feel like to, dying, as, you literally can't breathe. It usually lasts seconds and it feels like forever in the moment. And there's not a whole lot you can do about it until it ends. And unfortunately, if you've got loved ones around, people around, there's nothing nobody else can do. And it generally happens at night. Typically, what the cause of this is, it could be from enlarged tonsils. Sometimes, heavier guys, bigger guys tend to have, sleep apnea. It could come from someone who smokes, it could come from perhaps alcohol use before bed. And most commonly just, being overweight, right? So I don't have any large tonsils, I'm not a smoker, I'm not a drinker. And so mine's probably been more correlated to, being on the overweight, the heavier side of things. And it was a real wake-up call for sure this past weekend because, like I said, it's definitely not something I've been not used to, but it has truly been something that, this last weekend, by far the worst that I have ever experienced in my life. And it just made me more aware because I am getting older, and when we are older, we need to be aware of our health, of where we are at, because especially as we get older, just generally speaking, but especially when you get older, the choices that we make, the lifestyle that we live, everything contributes to our longevity, contributes to the quality of our life. And, especially if you got loved ones, if you got families, if you got significant others, if you got siblings and children and all of the above. It's important to think about that because you want to stay here as long as you possibly can for them, right? And again, even if you're not older and you're younger, health is absolutely a priority. Just because you're younger, don't think that it isn't a priority just because you feel healthy. A lot of times things in life happen over time. It's not like, one night all of a sudden you go from being healthy to not. It's usually, a time of, certain life choices and decisions and lifestyles that overall contribute. And a lot of times you may not see the after effect, the repercussions, the effects of it until the future, and as I'm older now, right, I think about, things I did when I was in my 20s, when I was earlier on in the age, and how neglecting certain things, not being better with things, living certain lifestyles, having certain vices, et cetera, could ultimately all contribute to, things that correlate with health or not health right now in my life. But this message is really about the importance of health, and really just encourage you all, to everybody, there is absolutely nothing more important than our health in life. And it should always be at the forefront and number one of everything that we are and everything that we do. Because no matter what it is we do in life, no matter how important other things are to us in life, none of it matters if we aren't here. None of it matters if we don't have a good quality of life. And that's why that quote, hits so hard, because it is such a true thing. We've got all these problems that we deal with day to day in our life, right? Things that we've got to deal with, figure out, problems and all of that. But when it comes down to something happening with our health and you're affected by it and something happens to you or you're not in great health, nothing else seems to matter more importantly in that moment than that, and that was my scare over this weekend, just thinking about, I've been on this journey trying to lose weight and trying to build muscle and do a body recomposition. And I've made some progress over this last year doing so. But, I haven't been exactly where I needed to be. I haven't been on point the way I needed to be at. Although I've made some progress, it really made me think over this weekend that I need to do 10 times better than what I thought I was, and become 10 times more strict and diligent when it comes to me tracking my nutrition, like my macros and the consuming of the food items that I'm taking in and stuff like that. Because, especially as you get older, these things can really play against you. You can get away with a little bit more when you're younger because your body's still new, it's still strong. But the older you get, it's like the risk increase much larger for certain things that can happen, from diseases, comorbidities to heart attacks and so forth. And, it's nothing to play around with. It's a very scary thing. And, when you think about everything, depends on the quality of your health, of you being here, longevity for yourself, for your family. We can't neglect this stuff anymore, guys. Sometimes we put things off, and the reality of it sometimes feels like, we wait for us to go through health issues and problems and something to happen to then address it. And it seems like what happens is, we're more in this area of, of trying to fix a problem after it's already happened, versus trying to be preventative about things, trying to, lean on the side of taking care of ourselves and our health in many different ways, wellness altogether, before it becomes a problem. And so, this is just to bring awareness to all that and how important it all is, and how every day, there should be intentional goals, intentional mindset shift of a lifestyle of choices and decisions that are based around, our health right now in the present and in the future. Because, if we continue doing and living a lifestyle where we don't make health, any kind of importance, whatever, for any, point of it, it'll catch up. It's not gonna, nobody's ever gonna escape it, right? You could neglect your health for so long. You can neglect, eating properly. You can neglect not exercising. You can neglect not putting bad stuff in your body for some time. But at some point, you can't run out on that check. At some point, you're going to have to pay in full. At some point, it's all going to catch up. And the longer it takes, the worse it's going to be. And it should be a very scary thing for anyone who's not taking care of their health, who's not taking it more seriously, because nobody's immune to any of it. It's just going to be a matter of time, right? And like I said, for me, this has just been a big reminder that I have to take things 10 times more seriously than what I thought I was. Because when it comes down to something like that, getting myself down to a healthier weight could really help prevent that again in the future. Like I said, unfortunately, I had a really bad episode, and so it was by far one of the worst I've ever had, and it really woke me up to be like, okay, like, I know I haven't been on top of my nutrition. I need to nip this thing right now and get in complete control of this, or this thing could ultimately be the thing that kills me. And that's scary, because people could die from sleep apnea, because again, you're losing your ability to breathe for several seconds. And, if it's something that could increase, if I don't, change something about it now, then who knows? And all I had in my mind after it was all done, thinking that moment, was, I'm way too young for this stuff to be happening to me, Although that has happened before, my mindset was, I'm too young to go. I may be 40, but I'm only 40. I've got so much planned. I've got so many responsibilities. I got so many people who depend on me, and especially if you're someone who's in your family, the leader, someone who's, kind of the head, trying to take charge and try to be the provider and protectors and all of that. I mean, it needs to be an obligation, especially to us, folks who are significant others and fathers and other things to our families, right? This is something we can't play around with anymore, and we have to take it with the utmost of seriousness. I want to be here as long as I can to experience life with my loved ones as long as I can, and I'm sure everybody else does. But if we don't, pay attention to these things, if we don't make intentional choices about foods that we're consuming, about, exercising and you prioritizing our fitness and being mindful of what toxic things we put in our body, and just really have goals in mind to progress and get ourselves to become better, who knows how long we have, right? Things happen in life. We know that, things happen unexpectedly. We have illnesses, accidents happen, but there's a lot of what people, I believe, whose life ended a little bit shortly or declined a little bit quicker, are really just a cause by their own hands, because of years of neglecting, of years of bad vices, of putting toxic things in their bodies, of years of just not paying attention to any of it, that causes them to decline even quicker. Because the reality is, especially at my age, there's going to be this natural downcline, right? I've been around 40 years. I might as well be a dinosaur right now. I've been around that long. And so naturally, you have this aging process that's taking place. And if you don't do anything at all, it's just declining, right? If you're doing things to make it worse, not eating proper nutrition, constantly putting toxic things like vices in our bodies, smoking, drinking, drugs, all of that, by neglecting our exercise and all of that else too, we're only speeding up that process, And so we need to try to hedge against it, and that's where that nutrition comes from. That's where that fitness and exercise comes from, is trying to slow that down as much as possible, because we lose lean body mass. If we don't take care of our bodies, it'll start to catch up quicker, because it's like a snowball, right? It's a momentum. It starts to build and get faster and get bigger and get quicker the more we neglect it. And then on top of that, if you're adding stuff that's going to make it even worse, you're only speeding up that snowball. So, for me, this was definitely a wake up call this past weekend. And this really just is a message to just make sure that you are making it a priority. It would just be unfortunate for yourself. It would be unfortunate for your loved ones, for you to leave sooner than God had planned to because of neglecting your own health, of not prioritizing sleep, of not prioritizing, nutrition and fitness to be strong, to feel good inside, to feel good mentally, right? To feel rested and just have a better quality of life. You always have to think about if you're not taking care of yourself, especially as a parent, especially if you're a husband or a wife or a boyfriend or girlfriend, sons and daughters and all these different things. Someone out there is depending on you. Somebody out there wants you as long as they possibly can because they love you. Somebody out there is just depending on you to be around for them, to be there for things, to experience life. That's what life is about, is experiencing stuff with each other. And if we don't take care of our health, we're going to shorten the span of our lifetime a lot sooner than we'd want to and that other people around us would want to, our loved ones. So friends, I can't encourage you enough to please take care of your health today. Make it a priority. If you're not doing anything at all, if you're not paying attention to any which way, maybe you don't know how to start, maybe you don't have the support, maybe you're struggling because you have good intentions, maybe you don't see why there should be a good reason for you to start, taking care of your priority or taking care of your health and prioritizing all that. Please reach out to me, comment, send me a message, whatever I can do to help, because this is one of those things that it's like, sometimes, you're going to get to a point where it's life and death. And they said if you don't make time for health and wellness right now, unfortunately, the reality is you're going to have to be forced to make time for sickness later. There is just no way around it. You're not going to go your entire life neglecting your body, neglecting your nutrition, putting back toxic things in there, and then expect to live 80, 90 years healthy, strong, feeling good and in good health. It's just not going to happen. You might live to that long, but, the quality of life, it's not going to be the greatest. And you're going to wish you were dead, to be honest, as much as I hate to say something like that. But that's what happens to some people when they don't neglect their health. You may stick around for a little while, but, they turn into vegetables. The quality of their life, they can't breathe. They always have something going on. And that's the worst thing I fear for any one of us, And I'm going to start taking things a lot more seriously. As of this week, I really started, taking notes of what things I know I'm struggling with, like my nutrition and tracking my macros, what things I know I need to be more accountable with myself with, and letting myself know that, hey, you can't be playing with your life anymore. Is that other, is this and that worth, trading your life for? Like, I need to get down in weight. I need to get 10 times healthier. I need to be more careful with the things I'm consuming. I need to be much more vigilant about really just tackling this thing before it becomes a bigger issue. Because again, as I said, especially at my age, you start to get older, and not neglecting your health and not taking care of it is only going to increase the odds and chance and risk of things getting worse or things happening sooner than later. And that's nothing I want for myself. My family needs me. They deserve me around. I've got to be here around for them. They want me around. They deserve, and I deserve for us to all be around as long as I can. And most importantly, being a better example. Sometimes there's a lot in your life going on, and there's a lot of, maybe those surrounding you who are maybe not paying the most attention to their health. And some families need someone to step up and be the role model and be the example, so that it helps the quality of life for your others who are surrounding you in your life, your family, your loved ones, and all that. So there's a lot of that too, with being a good role model, setting a good example, but most importantly, it's your health. If you got other things going on in your life, but your health isn't there, it's like we need to drop any and everything else that we're doing and make that our priority number uno, right? Yes, God is important. Yes, family is important. Yes, a lot of things are important, but I know God would say, hey, if you don't have your health, then you don't have your life. You don't have your family. You don't have anything. So none of that matters unless you are here. And that's why health has to be the number one thing, which is why I'm always saying that health is our wealth. I just haven't been the best at living up to those standards, especially someone putting this out there all the time, advocating for it. It's not easy. It's a struggle, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to get better and progress and unlearn certain habits and get better at certain habits. But sometimes you have certain scares that just really kick you up into another gear and be like, okay, there is no, I don't feel like it, or I forgot, or I can't do it. Sometimes it becomes life or death, and if things don't change, you will die, and so sometimes we just need that awakening. Sometimes we just need that hit dose of reality to be like, hey, if I neglect my health, then I'm neglecting, my responsibilities. I'm neglecting, my family. I'm neglecting a lot of things because it means I don't care enough for them or my own life to do something that's going to help me keep me here long, strong, and healthy as long as possible for myself and them. So friends, again, this is really just more of a message to share some stuff that happened with me. Just new priorities and accountabilities I am going to take upon myself to be that example and role model to myself, to my families, and to everybody else out there, but more so to continue to encourage you to not neglect your health, please, because, you may not be sick right now, right? You might not be sick right now, but if you're not taking your care of your health and you're not doing anything to better it, it's only going to be a matter of a time. It's going to catch up to everybody. It doesn't matter if you've been, not exercising and eating crap and smoking and drinking and doing drugs for years. And you're like, I feel all right now. It's not going to be. It can all happen to you at once. All of a sudden you got a liver disease. All of a sudden you got lung disease, lung cancer, liver cancer, whatever. One day all of a sudden you could just be hit with news from the doctor saying this and that's happening because you haven't taken care of your health, with fitness and nutrition, and it's now become a matter of life and death. It's like, instead of waiting for things to happen and find a problem or find a way to fix it and resolve it, let's work on the front side of here of trying to prevent things. And that's where my mind frame is right now going forward, is I'm going to do everything I can. There's certain things I'm just not going to do anymore. Stop putting my body, whatever it is. I'm going to be 1,000 times more accountable to myself because I know my life is in the hands of my own hands here of getting better, of getting healthier and being here as long as possible for my loved ones and my family. So I hope those words really fell upon you today. It's really just encouragement just to see you all happy and healthy and strong for yourself, for your family, so you can be here long, so you can enjoy a good quality of life as long as possible. And, just because I had recent things happen here to me, that was kind of another waking up moment that I was like, I need to get on top of that. And I just want to see you all, at your best too. And just an encouragement that if you're not taking care of your health right now, please make sure it's the most important thing that you do in your life today for yourself and for your loved ones. Thank you all once again for tuning into this episode. And as always, I will see you on the next one.